Hello and welcome back to another discussion on near-death experiences. Now, some of you have seen my other videos on near-death experiences. You saw my material on veridical perception, and if you're not familiar with that, go back and take a look at some of those other videos where we talk about the importance of veridical perception. Veridical perception is when somebody has a near-death experience, their body is shut down, they are clinically dead for a little bit, and they pop out of their bodies. And before they go into the tunnel and have the classic near-death experience, they're able to observe things and, like, for example, seeing your relatives in the waiting room of the hospital when you're in the OR and being able to accurately describe what was going on there, what TV shows were playing on the television, what relatives were present, what they said, and what they did. These things do happen, and it's very difficult to believe in a mass conspiracy when we have so many of these stories that involve veridical perception. And it's very important because this is something that demonstrates that the out-of-body experience that occurs as a part of the near-death experience is valid. It is objectively happening. Your consciousness, your soul, is actually leaving the body and able to observe and experience life independent of the human brain, thereby proving the existence of the soul, just like the Bible said all along. Not just the Bible, but all major religions pretty much would communicate the same thing, that when you die, you have a soul that is you. That's the quintessential essence of who you are. It is more you than the body that looks at you in the mirror. All right, now, for Christians, this is a mixed bag. When you talk about near-death experiences, many Christians today recognize and acknowledge that this is awesome, this is wonderful, that we have evidence to support our faith. And so they're like, woohoo, near-death experiences. And then you have another group who are like, whoa, man, that near-death experience, that's part of the New Age, that's part of the occult, and we know how God feels about that. Certainly, it is very true that many of the YouTube videos and websites that talk about near-death experience come from people who are on the other side. They're into occult practice. They're into necromancy, talking to the dead, fortune-telling, astrology, New Age stuff, communing with your spirit guides or spirit helpers. These are all things that the Bible's like, don't do that because God really hates that stuff, okay? And so these guys are like, woohoo, near-death experiences, awesome! And they are like, very much, they promote them, talk about them, and are excited about them. And what can be confusing is when somebody who is engaged in a behavior that the Bible describes as really bad, when they're engaged in such behavior and they have near-death experiences, then what the traditional fundamentalist Christian expects is that these guys cannot have a heaven experience, because near-death experiences can be divided into heaven-ish or hell-ish. And the heaven-ish experiences seem to be more common, whereas the hellish experiments, those are scary, not quite as common, but just as real for the people that have them. And so for the fundamentalist Christian who's reading their Bible and so forth, expects that if somebody is living a life characterized by what the Bible calls an abomination, then they should have the hell experiences, where your good little Christians should have the heaven experience. Doesn't always work out that way. I have seen examples where somebody who considers themselves a Christian, even a pastor, dies and has a hell experience, okay? God warns them, hey, if you keep doing what you're doing, this is where you're headed. Usually the reason is because they are holding grudges. They are unforgiving of somebody in their life. And the Bible very clearly says, if you do not forgive men their sins, neither will your heavenly Father forgive your sins. It doesn't matter that you have wonderful theology. That won't save you. That won't keep you out of hell. And certainly there have been a number of Christians who have discovered that unfortunate truth. And then you have people who aren't Christians at all. They're either part of other religions, or they are overtly practicing something that the Bible says, don't do that, God won't like that. And yet they don't have a hell experience. They have something closer to a heaven-ish experience. And that can be confusing. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. Now, first of all, let's define the classic, most common near-death experience, or the near-death experience that most people seem to have. And it's characterized by, first of all, your body dying, or clinically going into a dead state. So your heart is stopped, your brain is no longer receiving blood, oxygen, and glucose, and the next thing you know, the individual finds themselves standing up alongside the body that's in the bed. And at first they're like, whoa, who's that guy? Or who's that girl? You know, and you look down and you realize, oh, that's me, I must be dead. So you're standing there looking at your body, and you're freaking out a little bit by it. But then the next thing you know, there's this pinpoint of light that gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and next thing you know, it turns into this tunnel, and you get whooshed into the tunnel. Now, there are steps in between, such as, you know, while you're out of your body, you can go visit relatives and things like that, but that's not the most common thing that happens. So you're in that tunnel, whooshing down the tunnel. At the end of the light, at the end of the tunnel, there is this really, really bright light, and that light is opium. That light is like OxyContin on steroids, to where people feel utterly euphoric. The closer you get to the light beams go into you, they go through you, and it's utter rapturous pleasure. It's a sense of being home. It's a sense of comfort. It's all loving and encompassing. You get a sense that this light just loves you, and the closer you get to the terminus, to the source of that light, you realize that, hey, that's Jesus, that's God. And you want to stay there. There's a sense of belonging. Wow, this is where I should have been all along. All of the hopes that you ever had in your life, all of the, you know, in our lives we think that certain things will bring us pleasure and fulfillment, such as marriage, children, money, that, you know, status and all that stuff. And we find that in life, all of that stuff is okay, but it doesn't really satisfy the way we thought it would. Well, finally, we're in a situation where we are experiencing maximum fulfillment exactly as we always wanted, and here it is. This is the completion. This is the sense that we always wanted. Here it is. That's why nobody wants to leave God. I mean, when you're there, the recognition that this is where you came from and where you belong is just overwhelming, and you want to stay. So you meet the Lord. Awesome, is cool. Now, along the way, or even before you get to God, very often you meet dead relatives, or sometimes the dead relatives come after meeting God, okay? But somewhere in this experience, very often people meet their dead relatives. And that's a nice reunion and everything, and they're all white. And nope, they're all in white. They're not all white because, you know, but anyway, they're in white, they're shining, and they are as you remember them, but they're not old, they're not bald, they're not fat, they're fit and young, yet you still recognize them, okay? So that's another cool thing about being over there, okay? And so either they or the Lord tells you it's not your time, you got to go back. And most people go, I don't want to go back. Too bad. Back you go. There is work for me that you have still to do. Your job isn't done. Your work isn't finished. Some rendition of that statement. And the next thing you know, even before that or after that, you might get this movie of your life. Very common phenomenon, where everything you've done from the time you were born until you crossed over, it's all there. Boom, boom, boom. Everything, it's all reviewed. And the purpose of the review is predominantly educational. It's to show you what you've done with your life, yes, but also to show you what's really important, because you see it from God's perspective. The things that you do out of compassion and genuine love, the things you sacrificed for others, you know, the things that you did in a self-sacrificial way, you understand that was really good. That was what God wanted. That is according to His desire. And you feel the sense of, yeah, go me, awesome, that is wonderful. That's what I want to see more of that. And the things we do out of selfishness, greed, anger, lust, revenge, jealousy, all that crap, those things that we did motivated by the dark side, you sense the displeasure, you sense the waste of it, you sense that you broke His heart. And when you finish the movie, you're left with, whoa, this is where I am, and I want to do better. And very often that is motivation for wanting to come back and have another chance. And that's kind of the education that God uses with that life review. And then back you go. Now, very, very often, for individuals with really serious catastrophic disease, if you get to meet God, when you come back, your recovery is miraculous. Very, very often. If you listen to YouTube, you can listen to the stories yourself. But very often, for those that meet God, when you come back, the debility that the doctor said you would have because you were so messed up, miraculously, you have a fraction of that. You're doing so much better than they thought you would. Or sometimes people are healed outright. And so that's kind of a bonus gift, kind of God signing on, saying, you know what, that experience you had, that was real. And to prove that you were with God, let me miraculously accelerate your healing. That is not uncommon. That happens quite a bit. Okay, where people very often have no sequelae, no bad effects from horrible, horrible illness or injury. So there's your classic near-death, heaven-ish experiment. Now, I use the word experience, I should say. I use the word heaven-ish because it's not heaven. Near-death experiences are not heaven or hell. They are glimpses of heaven-like experiences or hell-like experiences. Why? Because part of the definition of heaven or hell is that it's eternal. You can't leave. Once you're there, you're locked in for all of time. Okay? And so these are temporary experiences. You have not surprised God. He wasn't under the idea that, whoa, we had you, you were supposed to be reserved for eternity, and I didn't see this, but you're only here for a few minutes. Wow, that throws my plans off. He knows it's a near-death experience, and it's a near-death experience designed mostly for educational purposes. Now, God doesn't have to use it for educational purposes. Not everybody gets an education. Sometimes people pop out of their body, they see a glimpse of the other side, and they don't get a lot of these incredible elements to the full-blown heaven-ish experiences, all right? But very often, the ones with the most interesting stories come back with these types of stories. So heaven or hellish near-death experiences aren't eternal. They're temporary, and they can be used by God for education. And as I mentioned, the evidence that these near-death experiences are objectively real is overwhelming. Most of the people who deny the reality of these are people that are afraid to actually look at the evidence. They really don't spend time reviewing hundreds of near-death experiences, because now you can. Thanks to YouTube, thanks to the internet, you can review hundreds of people giving their sincere testimonies about their near-death experiences. And very often you have veridical perception reported not just by the patient, but by the physicians, the people that cared for them, the nurses, the hospice workers, okay? So, again, people that want to maintain a reductionist viewpoint, that the human body is only a brain and there's nothing more, there is no soul, I submit to you that my knowledge of these people, because I know some of them personally, I've debated some of them, they don't look at the evidence. They're surprised by every single story that I recount. They haven't even looked at them, okay? They already have the conclusion that there is no God, there is no soul, and they don't bother investigating at all. Now, what I want to talk about is going back to the premise of this video, is that how is it that some people who are doing behaviors that the Bible said, whoa, don't do that, it's abomination, it ticks God off a lot, and it will get God to reject you if you practice these things, how is it that they don't have hell experiences? Well, to answer that question, I want to look at a couple of hell experiences to give you some idea as to what comprises a hell experience. What do the tormenting demons of hell actually look like?
A perforation of my stomach. When this happened, the pain was the most acute pain I'd ever experienced in my life, and it just dropped me right down to the ground. And so I'm twisting and kicking and moaning and screaming and yelling around on the floor. And my wife called the desk, and they called an emergency service. A doctor came, and he called an ambulance because he knew what was wrong, and they took me about 8 miles across town to the public hospital, to the General Hospital of Paris, where I was taken into emergency, examined by 2 more doctors who knew exactly what was wrong with me, and then they took me away to the surgery hospital, which was a couple blocks away. And I was parked there because there wasn't any surgeon available to do the surgery. And so there I lay for 8 to 10 hours in that hospital with no medication, no examination, no attention whatsoever, awaiting a surgeon to come to give me this operation that was critical. And it's now 8:30 at night. Nurse came in and said that they were very sorry they weren't able to get a doctor for me and they'd get one the next day. Well, when she said that, I knew that it was over for me. I knew that I was dead. The only thing that was keeping me alive was I didn't want to die. I was scared to death of dying because as far as I knew, I was an atheist, non-believer, person who lived for the gratification they could get out of the moment, and like dying to me was like the worst. I mean, next to the pain, dying was the worst thing that could happen to you because it was the end of life and there was no more, there wasn't anything else. But when she said that, the idea of trying to exist for another minute, another hour in this pain, it wasn't worth it anymore. I'd been hanging on in the hopes that they told me that they'd get a doctor and do the surgery and open me up and fix the problem inside of me, but when they said they couldn't get one. So I said to my wife, it's time for us to say goodbye because I'm going to die now. And she got up and she put her arms around me. I'm lying on the bed and she told me how much she loved me and I told her how much I loved her, and this makes me really sad. And we made our goodbyes, you know, said those things that you'd say to we'd been married 20 years, say all those kinds of things. I can't tell you because I'll just start crying, but she finally sat down because she knew it was over. And I knew. And it was just so hard looking at her, crying like that, and I just closed my eyes. Just let it go. And I went unconscious. I probably was unconscious for a very short while. A few minutes, probably. And I was conscious again. And I looked, opened my eyes and looked, and I was standing up next to my bed. And I knew exactly where I was and what the situation was. I mean, there was no confusion in my mind. I felt more alive, more real than I've ever felt in my life. You know, people ask me, you know, were you a ghost? I was just the opposite. Very alive. As I'm looking around the room, I see that there's, underneath the sheet on the bed, there's something under the sheet, a body. And so I bent over the bed, the head was turned away from me, and I looked at the face, and it looked like me. But that wasn't possible because I was standing there, I'm alive, I'm great, you know. I mean, I'm more than great, I'm like, you know. And so I tried to talk to my wife.
Can't you hear me?
And,
can't you hear me?
you know, she couldn't hear me or see me.
That's not me.
But I thought
What's going on
that she
here?
just was ignoring me. So I got very angry at her for ignoring me, for not paying attention to me. And I'm screaming and yelling at her, what's going on here? Why is this body in the bed that looks like me, and how to get there and stuff like that. And I was thinking suspicion that the body in the bed was me. But I didn't want to think about that because that was too scary. So I'm getting really agitated and upset because this is all too weird. You know, this can't be happening. It's impossible. I've got a hospital gown on, and it's like really, everything's really real. And I hear people calling me outside the room, and they're saying to me in soft, gentle voices, Howard, you got to come with us now. Come quickly. Come out here. So I go over to the doorway of the room, and there's people out in the hallway, and they're the hallway's dank. It's gray. It's not light or dark. It's just gray, and they're all in grayness, and they're men and women, and what they're wearing might possibly be hospital uniforms. And I asked them if they were from the doctor to take me to the operation. And I told them, I said, I'm really sick and I'm going to have an operation and I'm going to die if I don't get this operation. I was supposed to have the operation 8 hours ago, and I'm telling them all this stuff. And they're going, we understand. You know, you got to come
quickly. Howard, come out here. Howard, come quickly with us. Howard, we've been waiting for you. Waiting.
I left the room, which was real, clear, bright, and went into the hallway, which was dank and hazy, and followed these people. We had a very long journey. There's no time, and whenever I make a reference to time, it's just an illusion because there was no time in this place. But this journey, if I were to recreate it, I'd have to walk like from Nashville to Louisville or something to recreate the walk with these people. And as we walked, they stayed around me, kept moving me on, and it kept getting darker and darker. They were becoming more and more openly hostile to me. First they were sort of syrupy sweet to get me to go with them, and then when I was going along with them, it was like, hurry up, keep moving, you know, shut up, stop asking, you know, it started getting more ugly. And so we get into complete darkness. I'm absolutely terrified because people are very hostile. I don't know where I am. I said, I'm not going to go with you any further. They said, you're almost there. And we started to fight. I was trying to get away from them. They were pushing and pulling at me. And there are now a lot of them. What originally had been like a handful now was, since it was darkness, maybe hundreds or thousands. I have no idea. And they're playing with me. You know, clearly they could have just destroyed me if they wanted to. They didn't want to destroy me. What they wanted to do was they wanted to inflict pain on me because they derived, pleasure isn't the right word, but they derived satisfaction out of the pain that I experienced. So what they were doing in the beginning part was, it's real hard for me to talk about, and I'm not going to tell you much about it, just a little bit, because it gets, just gets too ugly. But initially they were like tearing and biting, tearing with their fingernails, scratching, gouging, ripping, and then biting. Trying to defend myself, trying to fight them off, trying to get away from them, but it's like being in a beehive. Just hundreds of them all over me. And I eventually was just laying on the ground there, all ripped up, pain everywhere, inside, outside. And even harder to bear than the physical pain was the emotional pain of what had just happened to me. The utter degradation that I just experienced. You know, I never once felt that it was unjust or wrong.
What's happened? And as I stood there, I began to sense something out to my right looking at me. In front of me, I felt like invisible eyes of something or someone checking me out. The darkness had an evil presence, cold, encroaching evil, pervading the atmosphere.
Where am I? Shut up! I deserve to be here.
What? Deserve to be where?
Hell. Now shut up.
As I stood there, realizing I could actually be in hell, a radiant beam of light pierced through the darkness above me. As this light touched my face, I felt an awesome presence go through me, and my entire body seemed to lift off the ground and be translated up into this light and radiance.
Okay, so for Howard's story, I want to pay attention to these tormenting entities, these people, these beings that he thought were hospital staff. There were people that were surrounding him, and he first his impression was that they were helpful. They were there to take him to surgery, and they started out being very sweet. I mean, syrupy sweet, and so he went along with them thinking that they had his best interest in mind. But the farther they got away, the farther they went into the darkness, the more they started to reveal their true colors, and they began to attack them. And the attack that they launched was was demeaning, degrading, and extremely painful. They went at him with their fingernails, with their teeth, and they ripped him. They just tore him apart, leaving him in shambles and pain and humiliation. Very often when people have these experiences, as they're tearing at you, they're also recounting all of the sins in your life. And the emotional effect of what they're saying to you is as bad as what they are doing to you. So you have these tormenting entities that are there tearing you apart. Now let me set this one up. In the case of Matthew, when he was around 12 years old, he was drowned in a backyard swimming pool. It was a neighbor's pool. And he came out of his body and went to the tunnel and met Jesus. And Jesus said, "It's not your time, you have to go back." Well, Matthew did not want to go back. He loved the experience so much, he literally verbalized, "No, I'm not going out." And next thing you know, he's spitting up water and coming back. He never forgot that experience. And for the rest of his life, he became angry and bitter and resented God for sending him back to earth. He felt that life on earth was hell. He developed a drug habit, and his cocaine habit was very expensive. He was spending $1,000 a week on cocaine, and he could not stop. And one day he decided to commit suicide. His justification for committing suicide was he remembered how good death felt when he had drowned at age 12. Only when he committed suicide, instead of going to the good place, he had a different experience.
And at some point, I tried to stop, and I realized I'm addicted. I'm addicted to this. I can't stop. And then the thought came to my head, why don't you kill yourself? And then you can go back to this really good place, because there's nothing like that here. And this peace came over me. I started drinking some alcohol, because I know I can't do this unless I'm drunk. Get about a third of the bottle gone, and I start taking sleeping pills, and I eventually take the 3 bottles. All of a sudden there's a flashlight. Boom, flashlight. I'm looking down at my feet, and I'm on a road walking. I look down the road, and I could see there's like a fog bank going across it about 100 yards down. And I looked the other way, and it's the same thing. Another 100 yards, there's this cloud bank moving across the road. Hey, this is really weird. And then it dawned on me, I was just trying to kill myself. This cab pulls up next to me, a yellow New York checker cab. I looked in, and there was this cab driver, and he was like greasy-faced, kind of bloated body, and his eyes were kind of those crazy eyes where one's looking one way, one's looking the other way. He just asked me in this gruffy voice, "You need a ride?" I was extremely tired, and I needed to sit down for a moment, so I just got in the back of the car. And I remember I sat back in the seat, and I thought, wow, I'll just close my eyes for a moment. And the moment I closed my eyes, there was another flash of light, and I'm free falling into a pit that's pitch black.
His lifelong wish to return to heaven had ended in a personal vision of hell.
So it was hot. It was extremely hot, very humid and dense. Smoke coming out of the ground. I am split into 7. 2 of me, I'm living in my past, and I'm experiencing all the people that I had met throughout my life. They would come to me and get within my face and start pushing and screaming, and I would relive a moment that I'd caused them pain.
Then he says he saw the suffering his death would eventually cause.
My mother, I was there when she collapsed, finding out I was dead from a suicide. My daughter She was 18, and she's sitting on the floor contemplating suicide because I wasn't there for her. It was on my hands and face, weeping, not just crying, but weeping for Jesus to save me.
How did you get out?
I was pretty much lifted up by the back of my neck and slowly, very slowly lifted out of this pit. A voice told me, you have work to do, and if you continue to live the life you are, this is where you're going to spend eternity.
So again, we have a pattern of the cab driver he thought was a friend, a comrade, somebody to offer help. And so he gets inside the cab and goes for the ride. The next thing he knows, he's dropping down a hole and he's in torment. And we come to this idea that not only can you suffer as an individual in hell, but you can actually be split into multiple people and experience torture times 7 or times 10 or times a billion, which communicates that for people that have been really bad, they're not going to suffer the same as somebody who was only a little bad. The worse you are, God literally has the ability to punish people to the full extent of their crimes by multiplying your consciousness and torturing each consciousness. Now, the Bible doesn't say much about the experience of going to hell. Jesus describes it as being in a lake of fire, where the worm never dies and the fire never goes out. And so we have this picture of a place where there's just fire all over the place. And some people do have that kind of hell experience.
And I began going down and down and down like a deep pit. And I started smelling the stench of hell. It's the most rottenest thing that you can ever smell in your life. In fact, you can't even imagine it. I began to feel a tugging, a pulling. Like the Bible says, demons tug and nag at you. They was calling my name. Boy, say, we got you, we got you, we got you. You belong to us now. I saw souls, lost souls that was in torment in the lake of fire.
However, the experiences that have been just described by Howard and Michael, those are kind of common when it comes to hell experiences, where there are actual demons there that take pleasure in tormenting you. Now, many people, when they hear the word demon, they think it's the biblical demon. It's the demon that used to be an angel. The Bible talks about 1/3 of the angels turning against God, and they became demons. They were formerly angels, and then when they rebelled against God, they became demons. And according to biblical theology, hell was created for them. So this place of torment was not created for man originally. It was the wastebasket or the jail for the rebelling angels. So the problem I have with the idea that these are the people that are having fun tormenting you, I'm going, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. If hell was made to punish the fallen angels, then why is it that they get to have fun torturing humans? So forever and ever, they're doing what they like. That doesn't sound very hell-like, okay? So, I mean, while that might be the case, they still have to put up with the weather there. I don't know, but I kind of wonder, maybe the fallen angels aren't the ones doing the tormenting. Maybe they're getting tormented just like everybody else. And the tormentors of hell were created by God specifically with the job description of tormenting everybody that goes there. Okay? I think they're like animals that were created to do the tormenting. But they're also called demons because they get joy out of inflicting pain. There is one verse that suggests that this might be the case, and it's not overtly a hell verse. It's over there in Matthew 18, when Jesus talks about the parable of the unforgiving servant. And generally speaking, it goes like this. There is this king, and he had a servant, and the guy owed him like billions and billions of dollars. He had no way of paying the guy back. And the king he came before the king, and he was like, I'm so sorry, please, give me some more time, I'll pay it back eventually. And there was no way he could pay it back, and the king knew it. And the king felt sorry for the guy, forgave him the entire debt. $5 billion, forget about it. You're clean, just, go and fly right. I'm going to let it go, don't worry about it. I'm a good guy. So he forgave the debt. The guy went out, found a former friend of his who owed him $100, and demanded it, and the guy said, please be patient with me, and instead of forgiving the guy, he had him thrown in jail for the debt that he owed him for $100. Well, his friends found out about that, and they went to the king and said, hey, you remember that guy that you forgave $4 billion? He went out and had a guy arrested for $100. And the king pulled him back in and said, you worthless, wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt, and yet you would not forgive somebody for that little amount? For just because you did that, I'm going to make you pay the full amount. So that's the parable. So I draw your attention to verse 33. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you? In anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. And so Jesus is giving this description as to what it's going to be like for believers who refuse to practice forgiveness. All right? And so the idea that it's not just you go to a place where the weather is bad, it's where you are, there are jailers there who are going to be doing the tormenting. And that's the only, as far as I know, that is the only New Testament indication of having tormentors in hell. Okay? So just something to think about. And keep in mind, in those two examples that we just saw, the tormentors start out being friendly, as though they're on your side. But the deeper you go into their world, the more their true colors show, and they start taking pleasure in damaging you. With regard to the fallen angel class of demon, what they do from a biblical perspective, they got two things that they do, and they do it to spite God. They deceive and tempt. They deceive and tempt. They want to get people away from God. They don't want humans going to heaven. They don't want humans to take their position as God's adult children. Because that is what, according to Christianity, that's God's objective for all of us. He wants us to experience forgiveness of all our sins by accepting Christ. All right? And then having had that relationship, to walk with him and to grow up and mature and ultimately go to heaven to be his adult children. That's God's plan. Demons don't like that. They don't want God having a happy family. God loves us, and so they hate us. And they want us to burn with them. They want us to go to that place of torment with them. To that end, they try to deceive us. They want to get us to do behaviors that get us on God's bad side. That's where the deception comes in. That's where the temptation comes in. They want us to do things, they know the Bible. They know the things that God hates, and so that's what they want to push us towards.
Like, just imagine words. Just imagine you guys sitting, like, we're talking, and you're sitting down, and then all of a sudden words just flash in front of your face, like, game over. In the atmosphere, game over. And then all of a sudden, I hear, I'm going to say, well, yeah, no, it was the devil. I'm telling you. If no one believes in it, he's real. All of a sudden, oh, I'm getting chills when I even think about it. He literally says, oh, I'm getting chills. I'm like literally getting chills. He goes, ha ha ha, fooled you. He literally said, ha ha ha, fooled you. And I'm like,
before I became a Christian, I was involved in occult practice. There was something called teleoccult power, which is essentially white witchcraft. I found it very attractive. The idea of having powers was very appealing to me. Back then, we had Bewitched and I Dream a Genie, and when I discovered that witchcraft was possible, that wasn't a comic book superpower, that you could literally become a witch, I was very impressed with that, and so I had a small library of occult books. And yeah, I was all into that, okay? When it comes to fortune telling, telekinesis, thought projection, influencing others through occult practice, and also the big part of occult practice was communing with my spirit guides. And you learn techniques to chant and meditate and commune with your spirit guides. What we were taught is that the spirit guides are angels. They are helpers of God that want to help us develop our psychic powers so that we can experience our true power. All right? So that's what the occult was about. I wasn't into necromancy, talking to the dead and that stuff, but that's another branch. So spirit guides, yeah, that's something that you do in the occult in many branches of the occult practice. Now, from a biblical perspective, That's a no-no. Consulting with the spirits is considered abomination. We've got tons of Bible verses that tell us that God considers all occult practice abomination, which includes astrology, talking to the dead, communing with the spirits, fortune-telling, all of it. That is not just a no-no, it's toeva. It's an abomination that essentially disgusts and infuriates God. The only indication as to why, because it's not really clear. Why are you so upset about that? Why are you so upset about precognition and all this stuff when we try to do it on purpose? Why? And the only indication is that he considers it adultery. He considers it prostitution. And the only way I can think about that is, why do you consider it that? It's that when we have a relationship with God, the deal is we follow him, we try to obey his commands, and as a result, he guides us. We submit to him our fears, cares, and worries about the future, and he gives us direction and guidance. And so when we turn to spiritists, when we consult the spirits, we are, instead of consulting our legitimate spouse, we are consulting a prostitute, somebody for pay, who will give us those same things for money, who is not our spouse. So we are cheating on the one that loves us and is devoted to us. And so when we go to the spirit community, we are turning our back on God, and it really ticks him off. It feels like adultery to him. It feels like we're consulting prostitutes. Okay? So that's just in a nutshell why that is. And the other thing is, from history, if you take a look at history of individuals who have been practicing in terms of exorcisms, we know that very often when people have something that's very rare but does happen, I've seen a couple cases in my career, and I've as a psychiatrist, I've treated probably about 200,000 people over the last 22 years. I got a couple of cases of individuals that did have signs of actual demon possession. I don't do exorcisms, okay, I refer for that. But anyway, very often in cases of exorcisms, there was occult practice by the subject or close family members. And so that kind of opens a door for these fallen spirits to have greater influence on you. If you go the route of occult practice, they have more influence on you, to the point where it can be a really nasty demonic possession. So those are just some thoughts onto why God gets really upset when we engage in occult practice. Now, these demonic entities, when somebody is under their influence, as a Christian, as a fundamentalist Christian, you might think, whoa, if your spirit helpers are speaking to you, it's an error to assume that they lie all the time. The sky is really red. Yeah, that's the ticket. Believe that the sky is red. All right, no. In fact, I would say that most of the time they tell the truth. A good liar knows how to use the truth. They know how to feign sincerity. A good liar wants you to trust them. A good liar needs to be credible. In my experience, when my patients report that they have gone to an intuitive reader, which is a fancy way of saying they went to a fortune teller. The word fortune telling isn't used very much anymore. Intuitive reader is the new word, which means they consult their spirit guides who give them information about your future. Okay? And from a biblical perspective, those spirit guides are not angels. But I will tell you that most of the time, the readings that people are getting are not that far off. Okay? So the fallen angels, when they interact with their mediums, with their people, very often they're passing along information that may indeed be valid. There is evidence for that in the Bible. So this isn't something that I'm not changing a doctrine that goes against the Bible. Over there in Acts chapter 16, there's an example of this. Let me read it for you real quick. This is regarding Paul. As he was going through this particular city, there were these people that had a slave that had psychic abilities. She was very good at practicing fortune telling, and so her owners, they would take the money that they would make from renting her out to do readings. Okay, she was very good at intuitive readings, and so she was following Paul around, announcing to everybody that he was from God. Okay, let me read the verse. It says, "As we were going to the place of prayer, we were met by a slave girl who had a spirit of divination and brought her owners much gain by fortune telling. She followed Paul and us, crying out, These men are servants of the Most High God, who proclaim to you the way of salvation. So she's saying the truth. So see, here we have somebody who reportedly has a demon that is proclaiming the truth. And this she kept doing for many days. Paul, having become greatly annoyed, turned and said to the spirit, I command you in the name of Jesus Christ to come out of her. And it came out that very hour. And when she lost the spirit, she was unable to predict the future. Her fortune-telling days were over. And this got Paul in a lot of trouble because he took away these people's source of income. And the point here, the reason that I bring this up is to just demonstrate what I just said. When people go to fortune tellers, God doesn't say, actually, yeah, in terms of what gets God angry, it's not just practicing fortune telling, it's going to a fortune teller. That makes you guilty as well. Going to one, getting a reading is considered an abominable behavior, okay? And it's not an abomination because they're wrong, okay? They tell the truth a lot. Now, again, let's say it's 90% truth. Don't know what percentage it is. Have not done any surveys, have not looked at any research on this particular matter, but let's say that 90% of the time they are dead on. They're telling the truth. If you're a demon, in the areas where you're going to lie, the goal is to lead people into darkness, away from God. That is the master plan of the fallen angel community. Keep that in mind. So then, knowing what kind of abomination spiritism, astrology, horoscopes, well, that astrology and horoscopes are the same thing, but talking to the dead, talking to the spirits, all this kind of stuff, knowing that that is considered really bad by God, how is it possible that we have near-death experiences where people who are doing these things aren't having a bad time? They're not going to that place where they're being torn apart or subjected to flames or torment in any way. Okay? And their experiences just are rather pleasant. How can that happen? Now, the first thing I want to point out is when you come across a near-death experience of somebody who's doing that, or any of the things that God lists as abomination. If you want to know what those things are, just look up the word abomination and Bible, and you'll see the verses that list all of the behaviors that are considered abomination. When somebody who's engaged in a lifestyle that God considers abomination, and they have a near-death experience, I want you to look very carefully. Ask yourself the question, do they experience the classic, positive, heaven-ish near-death experience? And most of the time, the answer is no. I'm going to tell you that right now. Most of the time. There may be exceptions. I don't think I found one yet. But for the most part, it is not the class. It is something else. Something different. Now, the reason I'm doing this particular program is because a friend of mine sent me a YouTube video of Natalie Sudman. She's a fortune teller, and she didn't have a hellish experience, and so they wanted my opinion on this. How does this fit with the biblical worldview of judgment? And we're going to go through and look at her testimony in segments as we review the story of Natalie Sudman.
Now, you mentioned in your book and in some interviews that I listened to that you had some kind of psychic abilities throughout your life. Do you mean by that, like even as a child, or what? And what kind of psychic abilities?
Yeah, I remember as a kid talking to spirits, and I would have dreams that would later happen. And I think I was aware of the thin difference between non-physical and physical, because I remember sitting in church and staring at someone and going, scratch your ear, scratch your ear, scratch your ear.
And then they would?
And then they would, you know, and so I kind of understood the power of thought without thinking of it in that way. You know?
You should have done something really fun, like quack like a duck, quack like a duck.
Yeah, right. It could have been really fun. Yeah, so those kinds of things, and then I always had an interest in the kind of the psychic or the supernormal.
So I shared that. I had that as a child as well. And when she talked about using your mind to try to control other people, that was a part of telecult power, all right, where we would focus our attention on somebody and try to project thoughts into them in an effort to control them. That is, your spirit helpers give you those abilities sometimes. So that just shows you she's in church using her occult powers. So what I want to do is establish here that I'm not picking somebody and projecting into them, making it sound like they were into the occult when they weren't. You need to understand that she was hardcore. She was definitely an occult practitioner here.
I did some intuitive readings before I was blown up, but after I was blown up, the information has been much clearer, and I think I have more confidence in what I receive too.
Because now you do offer intuitive readings. What do you mean by intuitive readings? So it's not with tarot or tools?
No, I just I just have people say their full name for me a couple of times, and that it feels like that sort of gives me just the doorway opening, and I set my intention as that I will receive whatever is most relevant, useful, true, and accurate for the client, and I just let it come. Usually, I'll ask the client to think about what they want to know, so that they either write down questions or a theme or themes or something to have on hand. Because what I find is that when people have thought about what they want out of the reading, it really helps in focusing the information. Then I tend to get that which they are wanting to know.
Fortune telling can be done in many different ways. You can use tarot cards, you can read palms, you can read the bumps on people's heads. Or in her particular case, she just hears their names and then waits for her spirit guides to give her enlightenment as to what that person wants to know.
And in high school, a couple of friends were also interested in it, so once in a while we'd all go to get a psychic reading, or we would read, the Upanishads. Or, I certainly had an interest from an early age. This wasn't a shock to me. It wasn't like I didn't have any kind of reference to understand what was going on. I had some kind of reference points, even if some of them were changed.
And then I guess this is all leading up to your experience, which you do detail in the book. Mm-hmm. When your truck or your car was blown up.
So we had been out all day, and we were on our way back to base when an improvised explosive device went off under our truck. When the bomb went off, I immediately left my body. I call it blinking. I blinked to another place.
And I love how you, and we can talk about this further, how you call it the blink environment. So when you go to different environments, I love the word. Why blink environment? Because it happens very quickly, like in a blink?
In the blink of an eye, yeah. It just felt like here, there. There's nothing in between.
There was no tunnel, there was no traveling.
No tunnel, no traveling. And so it just felt like I blinked and I was somewhere else. It was that quick. You blink your eyes, and when your eyes open again, you expect to see the same thing. Yeah.
Generally, yes.
And yet, what if you blinked your eyes and found yourself in a completely different environment? That's kind of what it was like.
And during this whole time, you were not fearful, you were comfortable?
I was totally comfortable, yeah. I knew exactly where I was. I knew exactly what I was doing. Yeah, no fear, no confusion.
You went to your next blink environment, and what was the next blink environment that you were transported to?
Yeah, the next one I call the deep rest environment. It was... So if you can imagine a deep, calm, sort of inky black darkness, but really velvety, sort of really feels comfortable and cozy. That's what this place felt like. It felt like infinite space, but comfortable. And when I got there, there were two other beings with me, and I don't really feel like I had a form in this environment, or if I did, it certainly wasn't a human form. It was some kind of organization of energy, and it felt like these two beings were just tuning up that energy, just tuning up the organization of energy or the system in some way. I didn't interact with them. They just did their thing while I was doing my thing. And what I was doing at the beginning here was maybe a form of life review, but there was no judgment involved. I was just kind of looking through, paging through a book of memories or something. It wasn't any book, it was just all in my head, but a way to think about it. And I wasn't judging anything that I did. I was kind of, I was looking for things that interested me. I was looking for things that I could maybe use in the future, or I was looking for new patterns that I had not expected. I was looking for outcomes that were unexpected. So I was paying attention to, in a sense, cause and effect, right? I think it's really the only evaluation that I put on it, or judgment that I put on it, was whether something was fun or not. And I don't necessarily mean fun in like party with the friends or margarita on the beach kind of. Those are fun, that's great, that counts too, but sometimes when we work really hard, that's fun too.
Yeah.
Or when we accomplish something that was unexpected, or we didn't think we could do, that's fun too. So this included a much broader field of fun that I was looking at.
Something you're passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then when I was kind of finished with that, I just sunk into this deep, deep rest and rejuvenation. I think I described it in the book this way. It's like going so far inside yourself that you turn inside out. And so you're again in this infinite space that's just so comfortable and just really, really deeply restful.
Okay, there's a lot here in this part of her story. There are quite a few differences between what she just presented and your classic near-death experience. No tunnel, no light. In fact, she describes the depth of the darkness. It was an inky darkness, a velvety darkness, but she was comfortable in it, felt good. The black darkness felt good. Her spirit helpers were there. There was no sense of, oh, they love me, they knew everything about me, and they wanted to talk to me. No, they were just there while she reviewed her life. Now, there wasn't God or Jesus or anything. Nobody reviewed her life with her. It wasn't from God's perspective. She was left in the waiting room, and that was just a magazine that was there on the table, and she picked it up and started going through it. Okay? All right, that's how she went through her life. And instead of looking at it, now cause and effect, that is something that's common with all near-death experiences. What did I do and what was the consequence? And when you review your life with God, what happens is you end up experiencing what it was like to be on the receiving end of what you did.
I saw this and then it disappeared. So now I'm completely up in this light, and I see my whole life like flash before my eyes, and I feel like amazing. I don't go any further, it's just light. But I saw my whole life like flash before my eyes. Every person I knew, everything I experienced, like I don't know how it happened that fast, but I got to see my entire life all at once. And I honestly looked at my life and I felt like a complete failure. I felt like I had lived one big selfish life, which was only directed to myself, and I never helped anybody on this planet, or I never gave anything. To a substantial amount. Like, really, I just felt like I lived a life that was I guess now I know the terminology, but like worldly, you know. So that kind of like, it was weird because, you know, there was that one disappointment up there. So that was kind of strange. Just to look at my whole life, like, that seems so big on earth. Like, my life was so important, you know, my friends, my clothes, like, all this stuff was, like, huge priority here. And then when you get up there, you look at it, and you're like, it's kind of funny, because you realize how small this planet is and how insignificant, like, your big life really is. It's just funny. But anyways, moving past this point. So what happened was, as I looked through my life, another thing happened. My dog at that time popped out of, like, it almost looked like, you know, Mac Computer, similar to Mac Computer, where, like, everything flashes, like, it kind of looked like that. So everything's, like, flashing. And, sorry, that's my dog drinking water. And he's still drinking water. Everything flashed before my eyes. And then, my dog popped out, okay? My dog popped out, and then this girl popped out, and like like, I already felt so much love, but this overwhelming feeling of like love when I looked at my dog. It wasn't really a picture, it was just like my dog kind of. And then this girl, these overwhelming feelings of love came to me. And this girl was a friend, she was really close with me. And, yeah. So, and my dog I cared about so much, so I really cared about these things. I felt like maybe I couldn't just leave these behind. So what I said was, it naturally came out, like, I didn't have a body at that time, so it came through my mind. Like, I spoke through my mind, just like when you talk to yourself in your head, but it was like the only thing I could hear. It was like amplified, so it would be louder than my voice talking through my mouth, but through my mind, amplified. It was really weird. And then, so I basically said, I'm not ready to go. Yeah, I said, I'm not ready to go. And then, this voice, which was God, you just know, it's like this very familiar voice that almost, to me, what it sounded like was like the tone of everybody else's voice. It was like, this is the voice almost, and then each of us have like a different pitch, lower or higher, and like this was like the voice for all, and we all have like voices stemming off this voice. That's kind of what, it was so familiar to me, you know, and I can't get over it. But the next thing too is when I said I'm not ready to leave, or I'm not ready to go, or whatever, even though I wanted to be up there, I just couldn't leave behind my life at that time. So the voice said to me, if you want to live, show it. And then the minute I said okay, boom, it was like back out of the light, like back into darkness coming past me, back into...
So if you hurt somebody, you felt their hurt. If you helped and encouraged somebody, you felt the warmth, you felt the magnificence of it, okay? And so she didn't get any of that. She looked through her life story, and the purpose was, what's fun? What can I get out of this? What's good for, what do I like? I want more of that. So very different life review experience than what we saw with your classic near-death experience.
I think you also mentioned, you know, it could have been lifetimes or it could have been one blink. There was no time in this environment.
Right, yeah. I have no idea how long I'm
and
there.
And then you decided to come out.
Yeah, when I was done, I guess. It would be nice to stay there. Yeah, when I was done, I came out of that and blinked immediately to another environment where I was with two people. One felt like a really old, good friend, and the other felt like maybe that person was learning from being whatever it was, learning from us or observing or something. And we could see the blown up truck on the desert. below us, the scene. And it was as if we were about 100 feet above the ground and looking at it maybe at a 45-degree angle. So we could see it as a blown up truck on the desert, but we could also see our bodies inside the truck and see everything, the bodies, the truck, the desert, the other vehicles around, as organizations of energy. So from this perspective, we were choosing my injuries. So we were actually playing around a lot.
You mentioned that in the book, that it's kind of, it was funny if
yeah, it was very funny.
It's not funny, but yeah.
No, it's not funny to us now.
In humanness,
because we're looking at it from a different perspective. But from that perspective, to sort of do the equivalent of wave a hand and put shrapnel in my brain so that I had cognitive difficulties, we just thought that was hilarious. We would see a flash of my whole life, how that would play out, and just thought that was hilarious. Or we would chop off my right hand and then see that flash of what the rest of my life would look like, and we just fall down laughing.
Okay, now this is pretty telling right here. For those that assume that the near-death experiences of a fortune teller are the same as the near-death experiences of a Christian, this is where the differences are really, really huge. Can you imagine somebody in your classical near-death experience talking to Jesus or interacting with angels? Can you imagine them laughing, falling down laughing about, what if you had brain injury for the rest of your life? What if you had lost a hand? How funny that would be. Think about that for a second. If you've been following near-death experiences and you've seen some of these heavenish experiences, did anything like this ever come up where the angels or God thought it would be hilarious? What if you had brain damage for the rest of your life? Wouldn't that be funny? Not just a little humorous, but fall down belly laughter funny. Now, if we're dealing with demons, which is kind of the biblical model, then it makes sense that they would find it human suffering is hilarious. They love it. It's what they live for. So if this is a demon, it's very consistent. Finding humor in brain damage and the loss of a limb for the rest of your life, that's their thing. But it doesn't make sense if this is actually a true angel or the Lord himself. Just saying.
Thank you for explaining that. And then I guess if you would call it, the next blink is you're back in the truck, in your body.
Yeah, after standing around with these beings for a while, kind of discussing things from
your physical injuries.
Yeah, and what I had agreed to do, which a lot of that I just don't remember. Then yeah, I popped back into my body, and I had been kind of sitting with head on hand, elbow on the windowsill, kind of half asleep when the bomb went off, and when I came back in the body, there was an audible pop. That's what I heard, the pop. Mm-hmm. And I knew, my eyes were still closed, I was still sitting like this, and I knew what had happened. I knew that a bomb had gone off. I knew that it was not going to be just little injuries all around, which happens. And I was like, open your eyes, get on with it.
And your injuries were significant. I mean, they were quite serious injuries.
Yeah, they were. I had, my heel was broken by shrapnel. Both the bones in my forearm of my right arm were shattered. Some of the wrist bones were broken. All the bones on the right side of my face were broken. I had a skull fracture, and I had some pieces of skull blown out right here. So there was also some muscular damage. So this eye doesn't line up with this eye. Mm-hmm. And there was shrapnel and blunt force trauma injuries to this eye, which led to a retinal detachment. So I see kind of blurry, less light, double.
And were you in pain? Obviously, one would assume you were in great pain at this stage when you...
I wasn't, actually. I think that I think that shock shuts down pain. I think that may have been part of it. I also think I may have protected myself from that. I'm not sure, but I was not in pain. When the guys pulled me out of the truck to move me and I stepped down on my right foot, that was very painful. And then when they moved me from the truck onto the helicopter, they just grabbed my arms and threw them over their shoulders and sort of carried me very quickly to the helo. And that hurt a lot because of this wrist was basically a disaster at that moment. But in general, I was not in any pain.
And after your NDE and your recovery, a lot of people come back with certain gifts or spiritually transformative experiences. What were your experiences like the first 6 months after your NDE?
Oh, well, I think a big thing for me was that I haven't had any kind of depression. I used to have kind of off and on depression, and I haven't felt that at all since I had my NDE, which is great.
Sure.
That's a relief. And I think it's certainly, I don't think it's just tied to, I think it's not because I had my NDE. I think it's because I understood some things within the NDE. I think understanding that I am the agent in my life, that I am the creative agent in my life, and that I'm not a victim of anything. That makes a huge, huge difference in how you walk through the world, right? And what you blame or don't blame for your own circumstances and things like that. So that was big for me. I think I've always had kind of a black sense of humor, so it gave me a lot of good material for my black sense of humor.
With regard to this last part, I would really have to read her book to know exactly what she meant about the resolution of her depression. She commented that she felt that she was not a victim, that she was the agent of her destiny. My initial impression was, because in her near-death experience, I didn't show the whole thing, but she did comment that there was no overarching power, there was no God figure there, and she was kind of happy about that she was the force in her life that gave her things, that was her provider. She herself was the most authoritative entity in her whole near-death experience, and therefore, she didn't have to think about God doing things to her or punishing her or looking over her or controlling her fate, that she was the architect of her own fate. Now, I'm not 100% certain that that is exactly what she meant. I really would have to read the book to know that. My impression is that that is probably what she meant. If indeed that's what she meant, what she's suggesting is that the realization that there is no God over her, that she is the Lord of her life, cured her depression, which suggests that part of her depression was the idea out there, because she went to church as a child. And so is it that idea that God is out there, and maybe she was aware that God does not approve of occult behaviors and activities, that there was this sense of, okay, what is my fate? Am I in trouble? The idea that there wasn't, she had a near-death experience, and there was no God out there, maybe that gave her comfort and alleviated her depression because she was now free to go deeper into her occult practice. And this is manifested by the fact that when she went through that and abandoned the idea of God as authority, she was able to commune more richly with her spirit guides. They were able to communicate better, and she was more confident when she did her fortune-telling practice. So those are some ideas on this. So you probably realize that there were a lot of differences. If you break down that story, on the face of it, you might look at it and go, wait a minute, you were supposed to have a hell experience. Okay. The hell experiences are there, I believe, all near-death experiences are given to the subjects for education. This is where you're headed, this is where you need work, this is, you know, this is what really matters. And then they're sent back to hopefully make some changes in their life. In some cases, I don't think people get education. I think they pop out, and for whatever reason, God says, you know what? I've given you enough guidance in life, and you said no to it, so I'm going to let you go. And so then you come out of your body, you go into the spirit realm, and who do you meet? But the spirit forces that have been guiding you all along. In her case, her spirit helpers, which are probably not angels. And that, I think, is what characterizes this type of near-death experience. Near-death experience isn't death. So to say that, oh, because people don't have a hellish experience, they're automatically on their way to heaven, you can't say that, all right? And when you're talking about near-death experiences and what the implications are for eternity, you can't say with conviction exactly what is taking place. I do know from a biblical perspective that, yeah, there are two destinations, but within those destinations there are various levels of the hell experience and the heaven experiences. Even the base model is awesome, okay, but these are your two end results. For near-death experiences, there's a lot more variability. You have this purgatory type thing, which is what she seems to be demonstrating, that can happen with a near-death experience that from a biblical perspective doesn't happen with a death experience. So just popping out of your body and chatting with the demons, probably not going to happen when you die for real. You go where those demons are going for judgment at that time. So for those of you that have been confused when occult practitioners don't have horrible experiences, now you hopefully understand what might be going on. I'm basically giving you a model of the universe based on biblical theology. That's pretty much what I'm doing here. So hopefully that will clear things up and alleviate some confusion if you were having it. Thanks for watching.